A different vision of the end of the world. Most Christians are familiar with a very specific image of the end of the world. Jesus returns from heaven in glory, the dead rise from their graves, Satan is defeated, humanity faces final judgment. The righteous enter eternal life, while the wicked are condemned. This is the apocalyptic vision found in the book of Revelation and in parts of the canonical Gospels. But the Gospel of Mary presents a completely different understanding of salvation and the end times. In this text, there is no global apocalypse, no final battle between good and evil, and no resurrection of physical bodies. The end of the world is not something happening to history itself. It happens within the individual soul. According to the Gospel of Mary, salvation begins through spiritual awakening during life and continues after death as the soul ascends beyond the material world. The soul's greatest problem is not simply moral failure, but ignorance. Human beings have forgotten their true spiritual origin and become trapped in attachment to the physical world. This idea is closely connected to the concept of gnosis, a Greek word meaning spiritual knowledge or insight. In many early Christian mystical traditions, gnosis was not ordinary learning or intellectual study. It was the direct realization that the soul belongs to a higher divine reality beyond matter. Salvation came through awakening to this truth. Because of this, the Gospel of Mary shifts the focus of Christianity away from a future cosmic event and toward an inward transformation. Instead of waiting for God to change the world, the individual must awaken internally and recognize the divine reality already present within.
The discovery and background of the Gospel of Mary. The Gospel of Mary was discovered in 1896 in Cairo as part of a 5th century manuscript written in Coptic, the final stage of the ancient Egyptian language. Coptic became extremely important for preserving early Christian literature because many texts that disappeared elsewhere survived through Egyptian Christian communities. Scholars believe the Gospel of Mary was originally composed in Greek sometime during the 2nd century CE, before later being translated into Coptic. The manuscript is badly damaged. The first 6 pages are completely missing, along with several pages from the middle of the text. Out of the original 19 pages, only 9 survive. Because of this, modern readers enter directly into the middle of a conversation between Jesus and his disciples without any introduction or opening narrative. The text also differs heavily from the canonical Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. There is no birth story, no miracles, no crucifixion narrative, and no detailed account of the resurrection itself. Instead, the Gospel takes the form of a post-resurrection dialogue. Jesus appears to his disciples after rising from the dead and delivers secret teachings about matter, sin, reality, and the soul. This style of writing was common in several mystical and philosophical traditions of the ancient world. Similar dialogue-based texts appear among the Nag Hammadi writings discovered in Egypt in 1945. In many of these texts, hidden wisdom is passed privately from a divine teacher to chosen disciples capable of understanding deeper spiritual truths. The Gospel of Mary belongs to this same world of mystical Christianity, where salvation depended less on public ritual and more on spiritual insight and hidden knowledge.
Jesus' teaching about matter and sin. The surviving text of the Gospel of Mary begins with the disciples asking Jesus an important question: will matter be destroyed or not? This question reflects a major debate in early Christianity about the nature of the physical world. Some early Christian groups believed that matter trapped the soul and prevented it from returning to the divine realm. Jesus answers by saying that all things eventually dissolve back into their roots. This idea closely resembles Stoic philosophy, which taught that the universe is made from basic elements like fire, air, water, and earth. According to Stoic thought, everything in existence eventually returns to these original forms through a continuous cycle of transformation. But the Gospel of Mary describes this process less as destruction and more as restoration. Physical reality is temporary and unstable, while the soul belongs to something higher and more permanent. The material world is not necessarily evil, but it is incomplete and passing away.
The text then gives an unusual definition of sin. Jesus says, "There is no sin," meaning that sin is not simply breaking divine laws. Instead, sin comes from ignorance and attachment to material existence. Human beings become trapped in passions, desires, and illusions because they forget their true spiritual nature. Jesus then warns the disciples not to search for salvation in external places, because the Son of Man is already within them. In this gospel, divine reality is not something arriving in the future. It already exists inside the individual and must be awakened through spiritual understanding.
Mary Magdalene and the soul's journey. After Jesus finishes speaking, the disciples become afraid and confused. The text says they begin weeping because they do not know how to continue after his departure. At this moment, Mary steps forward and takes a leadership role among them. Although the text only calls her Mary, scholars almost universally identify her as Mary Magdalene. In the New Testament, Mary Magdalene is one of Jesus' closest followers and the first witness to the resurrection. But in several non-canonical Christian writings, her role becomes much greater. She is portrayed as a disciple with exceptional spiritual understanding and direct access to hidden teachings. In the Gospel of Mary, Peter openly admits that Jesus loved Mary more than the other women and trusted her with special knowledge. Mary then tells the disciples that she received a private vision from Jesus and begins describing the soul's journey after death. According to her vision, the soul must pass through hostile spiritual powers after leaving the body. These powers attempt to stop the soul from ascending back to its divine origin. The first force the soul encounters is desire. Desire claims ownership over the soul because it had once been attached to physical passions and material existence. The soul responds by saying that desire only recognized its outer garment, meaning the physical body, but never understood its true identity. The body was temporary, but the soul itself belongs to a higher spiritual reality beyond matter.
The soul confronts ignorance and wrath. The soul's journey continues as it encounters another hostile power called ignorance. Ignorance questions the soul and attempts to keep it trapped within the material world. It accuses the soul of still being bound to physical existence and challenges its attempt to ascend. The soul responds by declaring that it now understands a deeper truth. Everything in the physical universe is temporary and dissolving, both earthly and heavenly things alike. This realization frees the soul from ignorance's control. Knowledge becomes the key to liberation. The soul can move forward because it recognizes that the material world is not its true home. The final major confrontation is with the powers of wrath. These powers call the soul a human slayer and a space destroyer. In the symbolic language of the gospel, these titles are not insults. They mean the soul has destroyed its false identity, the version of itself attached to desire, ignorance, and the physical body. The soul declares that what once bound it has now been defeated. Desire has died. Ignorance has vanished. The soul is no longer controlled by the powers ruling the material world because it has awakened to its true spiritual nature. This reveals how salvation works in the Gospel of Mary. First comes spiritual awakening during life. Then, after death, that knowledge allows the soul to pass safely through hostile cosmic powers and return to its place of rest beyond the material world.
Conflict over Mary's authority. When Mary finishes describing her vision, some of the disciples immediately reject her teachings. Andrew says that the ideas sound strange and difficult to believe. Peter becomes even more confrontational. He questions whether Jesus would really give secret teachings privately to a woman instead of to the male disciples. This conflict is one of the most important parts of the Gospel of Mary because it reflects real disagreements taking place within early Christianity during the 2nd century. Different Christian communities argued over who had the authority to teach, interpret revelation, and lead believers. Some groups supported bishops and structured leadership, while others valued prophets, visions, and mystical insight. The Gospel of Mary clearly supports Mary's authority. Another disciple, Levi, defends her and rebukes Peter for attacking her. Levi argues that if Jesus considered Mary worthy, the other disciples had no right to reject her. He also states that Jesus loved her more than the others because of her spiritual understanding.
The scene reflects larger debates about women in early Christianity. Some Christian movements allowed women to prophesy, teach, and hold leadership roles, while other leaders strongly opposed female authority. By presenting Mary Magdalene as the disciple most capable of understanding Jesus' hidden teachings, the Gospel of Mary directly challenges traditions that tried to limit women's spiritual influence.
The meaning of the Gospel of Mary. The Gospel of Mary presents a version of Christianity centered on inner transformation rather than a future apocalypse. The text teaches that the greatest human problem is not simply sin in the traditional sense, but spiritual ignorance, forgetting the soul's divine origin and becoming trapped in attachment to the material world. Unlike the canonical Gospels and the book of Revelation, this text does not focus on the future return of Christ, the resurrection of the dead, or a final judgment at the end of history. Instead, salvation begins during life through spiritual awakening and continues after death through the soul's ascent beyond cosmic powers like desire, ignorance, and wrath. The Gospel also reveals how diverse early Christianity actually was. During the 2nd century, Christians did not all agree on doctrine, authority, or the meaning of salvation. Some communities emphasized bishops, public teaching, and institutional structure. Others focused on mystical knowledge, visions, and hidden teachings passed to spiritually advanced disciples. Mary Magdalene becomes the symbol of this alternative tradition. She is portrayed not simply as a witness to Jesus, but as a visionary disciple capable of understanding truths that others cannot fully grasp. The challenge against her authority by Peter and Andrew reflects deeper historical tensions about leadership, gender, and who had the right to interpret Jesus' teachings. Even in its damaged form, the Gospel of Mary remains one of the clearest examples of a Christian movement that understood salvation as an inward journey of the soul rather than a future cosmic event.